You were so close, and then something happened. Maybe you stopped showing up. Maybe you started an argument that didn't need to happen. Maybe you just went quiet and let the opportunity pass without ever really deciding to. And the worst part isn't that it fell apart. The worst part is that somewhere underneath all the excuses, you know you did it to yourself. This isn't about laziness. Lazy people don't get close. You got close. That's the whole point. Self-sabotage doesn't happen at the beginning. It happens at the threshold, right when things are about to become real, when the promotion is within reach, when the relationship is getting genuinely deep, when the project is actually good enough to share. Something in you pulls the brake, not loudly, just enough, a missed deadline, a conversation that went sideways, a sudden, overwhelming need to do anything other than the thing that was working. And then you have a story for it. You were too busy. The timing was off. It wasn't really what you wanted anyway. The story is always convincing because you're intelligent enough to build a convincing story. But the pattern underneath the story is older than the story, and it's been running longer than you realize. Here's what's actually happening. Your brain doesn't evaluate success the way you think it does. It doesn't just measure whether something is good. It measures whether something is familiar. And if the version of success in front of you is significantly larger than the version your nervous system grew up around, if it's more visible, more stable, more yours than anything you were taught to expect, the brain registers it not as achievement, but as threat. Psychologists call this upper limiting. The idea that every person carries an internal ceiling for how much good they're allowed to have at once, how much happiness, success, closeness, before the system gets uncomfortable and starts correcting back toward what feels normal. The correction doesn't look like fear. It looks like self-destruction. A fight with your partner right after the best week of your relationship. A week of total paralysis right after a breakthrough. A decision that makes no logical sense made at exactly the wrong moment. The ceiling isn't random. It was built from information. What you watched growing up. What happened the last time someone in your family reached for more. What you absorbed about what people like you are supposed to have. None of it was a conscious lesson. All of it landed anyway. There's a second layer underneath the ceiling, and it's the one nobody wants to look at. Identity. Not who you say you are, who you actually believe you are at the level below language, because the brain is not trying to get you what you want. It's trying to keep you consistent with who it believes you to be. And if the person in front of the opportunity doesn't match the internal file, if success feels like a costume rather than a fit, the brain will find a way to take it off. This is why high-achieving people who grew up in chaos are often the most skilled self-saboteurs. They built real capability, real intelligence, real drive. But the identity underneath it never got updated, so they move through the world performing competence while the older version of themselves quietly waits for things to go wrong in the way they always did. And when things don't go wrong on their own, that older version makes sure they do. Left unaddressed, this becomes a life structured around almost. Almost finished, almost committed, almost there. The gap between your capability and your results stays consistent, not because you're not good enough, but because good enough has a ceiling you keep hitting from the inside. And the older you get without naming it, the more evidence accumulates that this is just who you are. It isn't. It's what you learned. Those are different things. The method I want to give you is called the ceiling map. It has two parts. Part one is pattern dating. You take the last 3 times something good fell apart in a way that felt partially your fault. Not the story you told about it, the behavior, what you specifically did or didn't do in the window right before things unraveled. You're looking for the threshold moment, the point at which things were undeniably good and you started moving away from them. Write it down, date it. Look at what the 3 moments have in common. Part 2 is identity interrogation. You ask one question about the version of yourself that exists in that threshold moment. What does this person believe they deserve? Not what they want. What they believe is actually available to them. The answer is usually quieter and older than anything you'd say out loud. It might sound like, people like me don't get to keep things like this. Or, this is too good, which means something bad is coming. Or, if I succeed at this, I become someone I don't recognize. When you can name the belief, You can see it as a belief rather than a fact, and that distinction between a belief you inherited and a fact about reality is where the ceiling starts to crack. You're not broken, you're just running old code in a new life, and the code can be rewritten, but only after you admit it's there. Your mind just got a little darker, and that's a good thing. If this hit different, don't forget to like and subscribe so you never miss what's coming. And if you're not done yet, I recommend watching these two videos next. They will keep you up all night.